Please. I am Commissioner Zoe and I will be chairing this meeting, and we have a couple of faces here that, although aren't new, I would like to introduce them as Acting Chief Constable Elliot Foskett. Would you like to say hello, Elliot?
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everybody, and good to be here.
Good. And also Acting Deputy Chief Constable, and that's Scott Bissett.
Good afternoon, Commissioner, and good afternoon, everybody.
Brilliant. Okay. Right, we're going to launch straight in and go to the performance section. So Catherine, who is new to the meeting, welcome, Catherine. Would you like to talk us through it, please?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Catherine Clark. I'm Temporary Assistant Chief Constable at the moment, so I'll take you through the public accountability performance slides now. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. That's great. So this first slide obviously relates to emergency 999 calls over a period of the last 12 months. So the top bar graph that you'll see shows our call volumes per month during 2023, and the blue line that you answered those in our target of 10 seconds. You'll see that we receive more calls during the summer than we do in the winter. So our performance in answering 999 calls has improved significantly in the past 12 months. Our target is to answer 90% of 999 calls within 10 seconds, and all forces are on a journey to achieve this, but I'm really pleased to report that here in North Yorkshire we've achieved a 15% improvement in average call answering time in the face of an increased call volume of 16% on top of the 2022 call figures. You'll see, if you can see on the chart, you'll see from December, we're now hitting that target of 90% of 999 calls answered in 10 seconds. The control room are working hard to maintain and then improve on this performance. So I can tell you over the past week, on average, we've answered 90.77% within that target. So we are on an upwards trajectory. We'll have a presentation from the head of control later, so I'll leave the rest of that in terms of how that's been achieved.
Charlotte, Sorry, Charlotte, can I just jump in and say, you know, I am really, really pleased to see that, you know, there's a real positive to see that the call answer time continues to improve. Really, really pleased about that. And I now note that we are 25th out of 45 nationally of the forces call answer times. I'm really pleased about that. So well done. It's great.
Yeah, thank you very much, and huge credit there to a lot of hard work that's gone on in the control room to achieve that. So you'll see in the second box down, call count by answer periods, and you'll see that there was a maximum wait time there. So that occurred when there were 12 999 calls in a very short period of time, limited staff on the 24th of February. So that's a long time now, you know, almost 12 months from this time, and our performance has significantly improved for that. I think it's important at this point for me to explain that with any delay or any missed 999 call, we explore the circumstances, we understand it, we understand that that was a pocket dial. It doesn't negate the need to answer it, but we do fully understand. We now have a technological solution in place called Reserve Agent, and that means that our whole system of answering 999s is different. So I'm absolutely confident that we wouldn't have any kind of waits like that. We search actively through a technological solution for call handlers that are available. So that's another positive one on top of there.
Catherine, can I just ask then, so just be really clear, that was for a specific reason, and does that happen a lot? You know, quite often you know, if there's a terrible accident or something, quite often you'll get the 3 phone lines flooded, won't you, with the same calling in about the same accident?
Yeah, we will, and that does happen. And when you've got a large volume, then there are things you can do in terms of who answers 999s. But that technological solution makes a huge difference, rather than a supervisor, as would have previously done, had to manually search and shout to people to be ready. The technology now pushes it out in a much slicker way and quicker way. So yes, we will get peak calls, and that will be a challenge. But we are better equipped this year than we were at that point.
Right,
does that answer that? Okay. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so this shows the same call volumes in answer times for 101. These are our non-emergency calls. So again, we aim to answer 90% of the 101 calls within 2 minutes. We have vastly improved the average answer time during 2023 to 2 minutes and 21 seconds compared to 3 minutes and 8 seconds in 2022. That was the average answer time. This has taken us from 53% answered in that 2 minutes in October 22 to 71% in December 23. So in December, our average answer time was 1 minute and 34 seconds, and our performance over the past week, again, shows that we've now got up to a percentage of 75% of all 101s within a 2-minute target. So there are times. Oh, sorry, Commissioner.
Sorry, I'm interrupting here. I do apologise. Catherine, do you want to finish and then I'll come in at the end?
Okay, so there are times when we would have to prioritise the answering of 999 emergency calls. In the same way, when we get a peak of those, we are naturally going to prioritise the answering of public self-selected 999 calls. Means it's an emergency. So I'm hoping that, you know, the public would expect that we would prioritise our answering of 999s, and we are continuing to improve. We are on an upwards trajectory. We're making more investments in the control room, which our head of control room will outline later on in the meeting, but we are on a good journey and a path to improve that 101 non-emergency call handling further.
Right, so a couple of questions here, and the first one is in the top left graph, and it's about performance. It looks like only slightly dipping here now. I wondered why that is. And the second one is the 22% call abandonment rate. I believe that's improved since these slides were prepared. Is that correct?
Yes, it has. I'm going to ask if Fiona wouldn't mind coming at this point. She's got that detailed knowledge, so just to ensure we get it absolutely accurate.
Yeah, hi Commissioner. So yes, you see a slight dip. Obviously coming into December, we had obviously New Year's Eve as well, so that'll obviously take into account. But certainly for January, we're seeing a abandonment rate of 12% this morning. Last Friday 7%, and Thursday was 8%. So we are really working hard to get that abandonment rate. We are currently, I know it says 90% on there, we are currently 80% to answer in 2 minutes. And I can tell you that we are, again this morning, we were 89% answering those 101s in 2 minutes, which is absolutely brilliant. So for January, certainly we are even more improved performance from what you see on there.
Yeah, you know, I'm absolutely delighted. It's definitely going the right direction. I really am pleased. I'm going to get on my hobby horse slightly, Fee, and I think you know what I'm going to say to you about this is the average, isn't it, over a 24-hour period? So I know you're probably going to address that later on in the meeting too, so we won't go on about it now. Thank you.
I can tell you, though, that yesterday was the shortest we've ever had, and the longest wait for 101 was 17 minutes.
Fantastic. Okay, that's good. That's really good. Thank you. Right, on to the next page. Next slide.
Just it. Thank you very much, Fee. Okay, if we can move on. Yes, so our policing response. So this slide shows our response times to incidents that are graded as an immediate. So we would class that as an emergency. So you would see officers going with blue lights and sirens where appropriate. For urban areas, we aim to do that within 15 minutes. And in rural areas within 20 minutes. We also then have a priority grade that we aim to attend within an hour of receiving the call. So not quite an emergency enough for us to be going so fast with blue lights and sirens, but there will be some element of risk in there. And we think that within an hour, we want to get there. So overall, our performance for all three priorities, which is immediate, urban, immediate rural, and priority, which is a grading name of its own, has again significantly increased throughout 2023. So we are continuing to improve that. We are making several changes to continue to improve that performance and achieve consistency in attendance. So we're changing some shift times of officers to better meet peak demand that we understand well. We are moving some officers to some rural forward deployment locations to improve that attendance to the rural emergencies so that we can consistently achieve 80% of attendance within those target times. The bottom chart there shows you incident volumes broken down by area, and to the right in the two tables we can see the number of officers on average that we would send, and we've broken that down to antisocial behaviour incidents, crime incidents, and public safety concern is what PSW is, so where we've got concern for welfare. So it just shows you the difference in terms of, you know, crime or complexity. We would not be surprised that we would send more officers on average to a crime. I mean, that could range from all sorts of things, from public order fights to burglaries in progress. So we would naturally expect to see more officers going to those on an immediate grading, which means that we're more likely to have somebody detained, some immediate risk to life or danger.
Just a question on this one, please, Catherine. for me, you know, obviously I've talked about really wanting performance to continue to improve, so I'm delighted it is improving. But can I just note on that first graph there that immediate rural has slightly dipped, and I just wondered why and what's been put in place.
So, well, in terms of why, it alternates at different times of the year. What's been put in place, I've said there, is forward deployment locations. So we've had a lot of analysis. We've been working with a deployment resource specialist to look at how we might improve that and those forward deployments. So understanding where we need to put somebody working at the peak times, so that that distance to those harder to reach rural areas is quicker from the point of call to arrival. So I'm quite confident that with those changes, some of which still need to be implemented, we're working with partners to identify locations where we can forward deploy our officers from. So we've already done a few. So we are continuing to identify other areas, and our officers are forward deploying, which means that they will be getting there quicker. So I'm confident that with a number of changes that we continue to work through in an implementation group, that we will consistently achieve above 80%.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we could move on to the next one, which deals with crime levels, please. Thank you. Okay, so you will see there is the crime trend over 3 years. At the bottom left, very low, that was, I think it's notable to say that that was a COVID lockdown period. So we all saw crime was a lot lower nationally. So we probably sort of discount that in terms of sort of comparisons, because that was a special time that probably none of us wants to think back to. So December 23, since February 21, 3,319 in December 23. So we're really happy that's come back down. And if you look at if you were to imagine yourself drawing a line, the overall trajectory of that is on a downwards direction. So North Yorkshire Police, you'll see, has lower levels in all but one crime type. So if you move into that bottom big table there with the turquoise heading, you can see there there's a column that says NYP rate per 1,000 population, and next to that England and Wales rate per 1,000 population. So that's the comparison for crime rates in North Yorkshire versus the rest of the country by 1,000 population, sorry. So in all but one, we are a lot lower in every crime type. So violence, theft from person, robbery, burglary, the drug offences, often those offence types that cause fear among the public, are significantly lower in North Yorkshire. We see bicycle crime a slight difference, albeit very small, and we know that there are certain forces that might sort of potentially sort of skew that data, if you like, where you have a higher population and a higher crime rate, the average can move. So albeit it is a different, I just thought it would be useful to just explain that slight difference. Your count by district data, which is the bar graph on the bottom right, this mirrors our population figures for each of those areas, and we don't believe that to be disproportionate. Any questions on there?
No, thank you.
Lovely, okay. So if we could move on to the next one, please, thank you. Okay, so this indicates you burglary, residential, and robbery, personal. So you can see there that the data is throughout 2023. What I think is important is that if we were to enlarge that out to a 3-year average, we do have peaks and troughs. We get different increases at different times of the year. And obviously with just 1 year of data, that's perhaps not reflected in the way that we can see it in our overall data over a longer time period. We know that we had a spike in one particular area. So when we have something like that, we respond, we put in place operations, we get ahead, we analyse the data on a daily basis, we understand. So we are quick to respond, quick to prevent. And whether we have sneaking opportunist burglaries or shed burglaries, we are responding and understanding that with lots of departments working together to try and stop those straight away. But obviously people will see the August, September, October. We fully understand that. We know what happened and we know how we responded in specific detail to those. But there is a longer term peak and trough to the data over 3 years. In terms of robbery, as you'll have already seen on the previous slide, robbery is not, thankfully, a common crime in North Yorkshire. So if you look at the axis to the left of that, we are talking about 10, 20 and 30. So we are still relatively low. I appreciate that that will cause still anxiety for members of the public. Any robbery is one robbery too many. But in terms of sort of public fear, it is not a common crime here, thankfully. But we do understand details in relation to our robberies. We understand spikes, we understand the differences. So robbery may make people think, you know, of that worst case scenario, and there are real sort of subtle differences in terms of robbery and what that means because of the definition of it. Is that okay?
Yeah, Catherine, there's a couple of questions on this one. So the resolved outcome rates are still very low. And also the awaiting outcome for robbery is 40.84%. Why is that?
Well, I wonder whether that might be something to do with administrative burden for crime outcomes. So we have a crime process that we have to go to in terms of recording crimes, and that requires supervisors to put updates. We don't just allow things to be closed down. So there could be an administrative backlog, if you like, albeit I do talk about that later on, and can show you a really good position in terms of that. I can see that the Chief Constable's got his hand up. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. Just from experience as well, and I know the DEP would echo this. We've both been detectives in our career, and robberies just have that slight complexity at times. You know, over and above, say, a theft, which would take slightly longer for us to analyse things like CCTV, forensic data, etc., which might just account for why some of those await just a little bit longer in our queue to sort of get through. And within the resolve rate, I'm not talking too much out of turn there, that robbery resolution rate I think is broadly in line with the national average. We know we've more to do around our burglary resolution rate, but I'm sure that at some point the ACC clerk will tell you about Op Crystal, which is going to be an amazing piece of work, which we think is going to catapult us way above what we think is acceptable as a national average. We want to be way above that.
Yeah, I think it might be really good or very useful for the public to see the national rates on these slides as well, so it can compare with them. Yeah, but we can talk about that out of the meeting.
Commissioner, sorry, can I just make a comment on robbery? I think the context of our offending in North Yorkshire is really important as well. So we do get a very small amount of what the public would have in mind as a robbery, serious type. You know, nobody robs banks anymore, thankfully. But there are other drug-related offences and that kind of thing that are serious. When you look at the context for robbery in North Yorkshire, there are a high proportion of those offences are children, young people on one another, either mobile telephones or bikes or that kind of nature, and that does bring a different complexion to the offence and how we might seek an outcome for that. So there is a context, it's albeit we do need to improve, as a chief and Catherine have said.
Thank you.
And I won't take you back to a previous slide, but I can see them here. So we are less than 1/5 of the national rate per 1,000 population in terms of robbery numbers, if that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks.
So 0.26 versus 1.3.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine.
Okay, so if we could move to the next slide. Oh, there we go. As if by magic. So violent crime and vehicle crime within the last 12 months. As you can see, we are on a downward trajectory in terms of occurrences of violent crime, which we're very happy about. Has reduced during 2023, and we've seen a gradual decline since 2021. Lots of work in terms of violent crime goes on. We have operations or Vigilant or Carol, lots of operations aimed at targeting violent crime, where we know that there becomes an area that we are starting to see a rise, which people might sort of know the name hotspot, for example. We will straight away respond to it. We do a lot of prevention work, safety in areas where we know violent crime is, for example, nighttime economy where you may have alcohol mixed into the fact. We have a lot of operations that try to reduce that in those areas. So we're really pleased with that downward trajectory. And then in terms of vehicle crime, you'll see the time when that is. We believe that the vehicle crime increase may be down to transient population due to weather for July and August. Summer months reflects that sort of seasonal normality, albeit it does reflect a rise there. If you're happy, Commissioner, we'll move on to the next slide.
Thank you.
So this says S136 mental health detention. So just a little bit of an explanation. S136 stands for Section 136 of the Mental Health Act. So that is a detention. It's not an arrest where police believe that there is harm to somebody themselves or other members of the public from a mental health issue. So it's a detention rather than an arrest for safety purposes. I just thought it was useful probably for people if they didn't understand. It's because they are complex, people with mental health needs, and we are taking them to the right places. So the bottom table indicates that all 136 detentions, how many were taken to health service places of safety versus police custody. So for those looking, TUVE is the Tees Esquire Valley NHS Foundation Trust. So we shorten that to TUVE. So on the left-hand side, you can see in the top row, the number that have gone to a place of safety, the appropriate place for health, mental health treatment, rather than a police custody. But I will note that obviously some people do still come in, but it might be that people were already in custody and then deteriorated into a position where their mental health became then a concern. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we detained the people on the bottom row in the street and took them into custody. We absolutely avoid that at all costs if we can. So it may be that they were arrested already. And what I can tell you that between October and December, we've looked into some detailed snapshots of that, 12 nominals in police custody who subsequently then required a 136 detention. Each of them was originally arrested for a criminal offence and deteriorated. So it may not necessarily be a public place detention. There's 135 as well, but essentially an assessment of their mental health has been made. So it's just to try and sort of point out the where people may be alarmed to say, well, you have got people in mental health crisis in custody. That will explain why.
So, Catherine, a quick question on this one. I can see here that you've had 2 people under the age of 18 go into a 136. And I just wondered, with regards to children, how differently do you manage this?
So police will attend to any incident involving a child. So people may have heard of Right Care, Right Person, which is an initiative so that police are not attending people in mental health crisis where there isn't another risk that does make it appropriate for police. But we don't apply that to children. So you might see that there are under 18-year-olds because of all the risk and all the complexity that goes around. And obviously people will be alarmed about children. But like I say, we work really closely with our partners. We don't want people in custody suites. It's not the right place. So we work really hard to make sure that they get the right treatment, but that might account for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we're able to move on to the next slide, please. So this now switches to crime investigation outcomes for all crimes. So this effectively will show we've done a lot of work in North Yorkshire to reduce a backlog. So I talked earlier on about the administrative burden. I don't want to use the word burden negatively. There is necessary bureaucracy and there are lots of checking processes and mechanisms for crimes to be closed down in terms of review. So we have a team of specialists who review crimes, and that naturally does create a little bit of a time lag in terms of outcomes. And we did have a bit of a backlog. So we have reduced that really effectively from circa 17,000 that were awaiting a closure in January 23 to circa 4,500 now, and we continue to work. We are continuing to put increased numbers and specialism in that department, and Fee and I have literally been in communication about that today to improve it yet, because we want to get that a bit lower. So while we are really pleased of that reduction, you'll see it's plateaued since the summer, and we want to reduce that so that we get those outcomes through quicker. So we are working to increase our staffing and specialism in that department to clear that backlog so that we see those positive outcomes increase.
Commissioner, could I just come in there if that's okay?
Yes.
Sorry, Catherine.
That's
This is really, really important, and a lot of the unseen work that happens in policing. This unit not only processes and provides administrative outcomes on crime to explain how well we detect it, but it also makes sure we record crime accurately. And North Yorkshire Police has a very strong track record and still retains it of having confidence in our crime recording. I think that's really important. From an ethical legitimacy and public confidence perspective, we have a very good record and have still retained it of recording crime accurately, which is why this unit's so important. So I just thought that was really important to mention, because we put a lot of numbers on these slides. It's about having trust in them too.
Yes, you're absolutely sorry, Catherine, you're absolutely right, Scott. And you have come a long, long way since January in 2023. But I'm really pleased to hear that Catherine and Fee, you've been having conversations, because it has plateaued and it's slightly edging up again. Yeah. So I'm pleased, and I look forward to a briefing on that after this meeting about, you know, the timeframes and what you're actually doing about it. So I am pleased, but you've come a long, long way. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just thought, just quickly, just to explain the bottom side, which is the positive outcomes, you'll see the correlation as the top graph has gone down, the bottom graph has gone up to just reflect the outcomes have gone up as we've resolved them. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So this is titled Force Legitimacy, and we are talking here about stop and search. So we know that stop and search is really scrutinised by the public. And for police to maintain legitimacy, we should be doing that right. We have a process, very rigorous process around stop and search, and the process that officers go through, how they communicate, why they're stopping somebody, why they feel that they need to search them, what evidence, what ground. We talk about grounds and what that's based on. So there's a lot of research gone into this area naturally. We scrutinise this regularly through a use of powers board. So you'll see there's, again, a lot of numbers on here. You will see we conducted on that left-hand side 3,114 stop searches during the period. Of these, 2,468 were a search of the person only, and 646 were then a search of a vehicle as well. So the power allows us to search a person or a vehicle. Of the 686, resulted in an arrest. And a positive outcome you'll see there at 503, that is linked to, so the grounds for which we told somebody we were searching them and what we were searching for. A positive outcome means we found that we were looking for, and that's what we would describe as a positive outcome. You'll see that 686 is obviously a higher number than 503, so people may have been arrested for other reasons. So there may have been other things found, but if they don't tie in to the original grounds search for, it's really important for us to monitor and understand for that legitimacy, that the public have confidence, that we understand the rates that we are searching, what we're looking for. There's a lot of scrutiny in this, because we know that it is a sensitive area for the public. It is quite a big power, stopping somebody, detaining them of their liberty in order to search them. And naturally, it is right that we scrutinise this so that we maintain that legitimacy, so the public are confident that this really sort of big and strong power is used wisely and ethically.
Catherine, a question on this one. So you've got four children that are 10 and under that have been stopped and searched. You know, what additional safeguards have to be put in place there? And also there are 30 that haven't been recorded as an age. Why is that?
Okay, so I'm going to ask again Fiona to come in if she will. She is the lead for Stop Search and really understands the data. So I'm going to ask her to explain that, if that's okay. It's not a surprise. She's expecting to give some addition in this one.
Yeah, hi, Commissioner. 4 under 10 on there. There is additional scrutiny around children. So PPNs, public protection notices need to be submitted. They're cross-referenced, obviously, with our partners to make sure that safeguarding is in place. I can reassure you, however, that those 4 are not children. They are a data error that we are fixing, and it's recorded the date of the search and not the date, because they're actually a day old. It's the date that the search happened. So we are fixing the data. So I can just reassure you that we haven't carried out those searches. Similar to the not known. So if the person has not provided a date of birth, because they don't have to, we have to estimate an age bracket. Again, they are recorded on the Stop Search forms, but some of that data hasn't come across, and it's done an estimate. And again, it's not picked out the date of birth because it's not recorded. It's gone for an age range which hasn't been picked up. So we are addressing that with our BI team. This is a fairly new dashboard, so we are still working through some of those data discrepancies. But just to reassure you, they aren't searches of children under 10. Any juveniles, even in the 11 to 15, 16 to 17, we should be submitting PPNs, and there has been a national change on the recording where we can tick safeguarding on those Stop Search forms, so then we can very easily cross-reference and make sure those referrals have gone in.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could move on to the next slide, please. So the Crime Survey of England and Wales, this is what this slide relates to. So again, a lot of numbers you'll see there from March 18 to March 2023. The most recent, that is the most recent survey data that we can access. You'll see that North Yorkshire Police is in the top 10. So if everybody looks across to the right where the rank column is, you will see that we are in the top 10 for each question. So we are top for public perception of the police in North Yorkshire, for our community understanding, public confidence. We are first for those. Second for perception of police dealing with communities' priorities and doing a good or excellent job. So we are really, really pleased with that. And I think that really reflects our culture, our communication skills, our engagement, and all the work across the board that's going on. So we are naturally very proud of that. You'll just see that the second box is just a visualization of that in terms of the direction of travel. People will see that there is a slight downward trajectory there. That is in line with everyone, but we haven't had a survey since March, so we don't know the true picture, and that is out of our control, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Catherine, just to say, I am really delighted with those figures. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'd like to drive you forward and say you want to be in the top 5, but actually, from what I'm looking at, you know, you've got 5 of those in the top 5. So I'm delighted. That's across the whole of England and Wales, all the forces. So that's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, we've said in the last one, in terms of our scrutiny of our powers, we really scrutinise that. We try to understand it. Anything that we find, we feed back through training. So things like Operation Crystal, we are constantly trying to upskill our staff because legitimacy is just so important for public confidence. So we don't sit on our laurels. We're very happy, but we continually strive to maintain or improve those numbers. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So this slide outlines our numbers against budgets, actual numbers of police community support officers, top left, police officers, top right, and police staff, specials and volunteers. So FTE means full-time establishment, so that's our targets, and then actuals are the number of people that we have in those roles. And then in terms of the bottom half of the slide, it outlines our workforce diversity, again, broken down through police officer, PCSO, special constables, who are our amazing volunteer constables who do that in their own time without pay, and then obviously our police staff. So you will see that there is a different gender breakdown in terms of each of those. We are monitoring that. We have a positive action team. We are doing a lot of work in terms of recruitment, retention. So there's a lot of work ongoing, but it's important for us to understand that, and then the reflection of our communities within our workforce as well. I can see the Chief's put his hand up there.
As you probably expect, Catherine, in all fairness, just want to sing our praises for our positive action team, because those figures around gender and ethnicity have come up massively from the work that they've done. It's worthy of note, Commissioner, that the national lead for the police race action plan is coming up to visit North Yorkshire in March, early March, and I'm hoping to link in with your office around that too. And I've just taken on the national portfolio for race, inclusion, religion and belief as well. So all of these things mean we are making progress. I hate to say the term that there's always more to do, but there is, and I know that John will he will hold me to the flames unless I say that particularly in relation to our police staff, we know that there's a lot more work to do there as well, and we will be focusing on that going into this next year. But I can't let it pass by without celebrating the amazing progress that the team here have made.
Yes, and I'd like to echo that too as well, Elliot. Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could move to the next slide, please. So this is a bit of a continuation really in terms of numbers. Again, a lot of numbers there, but it shows our actual numbers. We break it down into terms of headcount, so actual numbers of people who work here, and then you talk about a full-time establishment. So that's how many of those full-time posts, but people may work in part-time roles and portions of roles. So we break it down because I think it's important that we see that. We have a plan to maintain officer numbers in line with an annual recruitment schedule. Planned officer intakes, which is all agreed by ourselves in the Chief Officer Group, and we have further intakes planned for the rest of this year, which means we are on target to meet our headcount and our full-time establishment as outlined by the end of March, and we monitor that and we make sure that we are not likely to fall below. So I think there's quite a busy slide, but most of it sort of says the same, and hopefully people have had a chance to read the section in the middle if you're happy, Commissioner.
Yes, absolutely fine. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. If we can move to the next slide, please. A couple more to go. And so this is a specific breakdown in terms of police community support officers. You'll see where we are now. We are aware that we are low on PCSO numbers. Commissioner, I know we've been talking with yourself around that. We've been through a programme of organisational redesign. We are expecting to recruit towards the end of this year. It hasn't impacted, in case anyone was worried, on our neighbourhood policing delivery. We don't believe. We have agreed to put more police officers into neighbourhood policing via a review. We've actively protected our neighbourhood policing teams by instigating an abstraction policy since August. So officers get moved from one thing to another. We work really hard not to abstract from our neighbourhood policing. We know that that's really important to you. It's important to us. Safeguarding, partnership working, prevention, intervention, all very much done in that area, and engagement with our community. So we've worked hard to protect that. So I don't know if is there anything else you wanted to cover in there?
No, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, and then we'll just move finally on to the last one, which relates to sickness and absence. We don't see anything unusual here in terms of our sickness trends. We see a peak in the winter months, as would be expected, with, as you can see there, so the top right table, our top 4 reasons for absence are cold and flu, sickness, coronavirus still, unfortunately, and then just a little bit lower coming in are migraines. We are content that we constantly monitor that, support with people services, supervisors, support to try and get people back into the workplace as soon as they can, as appropriate when sick. So, and as you can see, bottom right, 2.7% of available hours were lost due to sickness.
Commissioner, just come in there very quickly. We've done a regional comparison. We compare very well in terms of our absence rates, very well. with most similar forces and the regional colleagues. I think that's important to note.
Yeah, so
Noted,
4 out of
thank
5
you.
quarters, we've been the lowest regionally, if that helps, Commissioner.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and that ends my presentation, unless anyone has any further questions.
No, I don't think there are. Thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, we're going to go straight on to the main presentation, which is the fourth control room. Fiona, could you introduce yourself, please? And I believe you're going to present this.
Yeah, hello. Well, now I am temporary Chief Superintendent. I'm Fiona Willey of Local Policing, but my role has been Head of Customer Contact. So I will be presenting today. Hoping, yes, go. There's quite a few slides, Commissioner, so I will touch on some of them because I'm conscious of time as well. Mm-hmm. So if we can move on to the next slide, maybe without the notes would be good. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
So obviously, you know, we've touched on it already, but obviously we, in the recent Peel, we weren't graded particularly great at responding to the public, investigating crime and obviously protecting vulnerable people. And a lot of that certainly within this world was we weren't answering the 999s in the time that we should have done. And again, our 101 performance wasn't where we wanted to be, or indeed where we needed to be in terms of the public. We had a high abandonment rate, again for 101, and we know a lot of that frustration for the public in ringing up and not being able to get through, which is one of the things we needed to work on. And again, it just lists there some of the challenges that we've had over the years that's kind of sort of led to where we are. So looking at low levels of staff, high utilisation rate, low retention or high attrition rate for staff. So all of those sort of had an impact on where we wanted to be. So if you want to go on to the next slide, please. So obviously following the Peel and various work, as you know, Commissioner, we put forward a business case. Thank you very much again for the support. And that was to increase our communications officers from 86 to 112, our controllers and dispatchers. So those are the people that will receive the call and then obviously dispatch the officers to the incidents. That was from 60 to 72. Looking at a workforce management tool, which isn't in yet, but we are procuring that. Looking at our increase of force incident managers, so they manage the criticality within the room, and establishing our training hub, and then looking at our resource management because of the ever-changing resources. We need to obviously make sure that we've got that on 24/7. So again, huge support there from the Commissioner to help us achieve that. And obviously we've now worked from December last 22 to try and implement that plan to improve our performance. So if you just move on to the next slide, just talk through some of the little bits that we've put in. So we looked at leadership. Again, myself and Chief Inspector Nuns came in the September 22. And again, I think it was that visibility, that constant reassurance, accessibility to sort of drive the performance. We've talked about some of the technology improvements, reserve agent, brilliant, because that automatically will find the next person to answer that 999 call. A really clear recruitment plan, working with our colleagues in people services to make it really direct, to make sure that we are maximising those opportunities to bring people in. Adopting the performance framework and making it really clear and providing that clarity for our staff as to what they need to be working towards, and also increased training and power hours, as we call them, so snapshots to improve our staff skills and knowledge. We changed some processes and procedures to make the processes quicker so that we can answer the phone. That isn't reducing the quality, but it's just making sure that we're asking the right questions to get the right information. And then obviously try and improve the outcomes, which is obviously the 999s, the 101s, and then getting those officers out to those jobs when they need to be there. So the next slide, please. So we've talked about the visibility. one-to-ones with staff, really important to make sure that we understand how our staff are working, what their needs are, what their skills are. So we've adopted a really clear process on that now, so they can see how they're performing, but also managing their welfare and well-being as well within those discussions. We've got team performance meetings now, so that we get that holistic view of what each team are doing, and are we seeing any themes and trends within that we can start to address, and that then feeds into the force performance. Direct support from the line managers, so again, some really clear clarity for our line managers, what we expect from them. We have a daily huddle that sets the priorities for the day and looks at any immediate learning that we need to pick up on, or any service recovery that we need to do. Engagement and feedback, so everything that we've done in the changes we've made, we've involved our staff within the working groups, because they're the practitioners that do it every day. So it's important that they're involved. And then just for the communication side, we have a newsletter where constant comms, videos, and again, just reiterating that clarity so they know what they're here to do. Next slide, please. Again, just touching on reserve agent, we've got a live performance dashboard, a little bit of a snapshot there on the PowerPoint. That's what the staff see in the room. So as you can see on there, it's green, but if we start to lose agents, that will go amber, it will go red. So if you're on the phone and you can politely end the call because it's going to amber and we want you to answer the next 9, it gives the staff a real indication of what that lifetime looks like, and that's had positive feedback as well from everyone in the room. And changes to our automated message, so again, we're directing our members of the public, if they want to report online, then they can do so. That's right at the front end now, so if they don't need to wait on the 101, they can actually go online, which we know a lot of people prefer to do. And obviously we are looking to improve and implement more channel choice for members of the public. Next one. Just again, just touching on retention and recruitment. So again, the Learning and Development Hub was established, which has been a real bonus for us, because they're really focused on what does that training package look like, and they have helped immensely with the recruitment that we've carried out to get us to the numbers that we want to do. And I think from the course that we've got on now, Commissioner, we will actually be at 111 when they come into the room. So really good news. Slightly not where we want to be for our controller dispatchers, as you know, but again, we've got a bespoke plan around that to try and improve that resilience as well in the room. But again, thanks to People Services as well for the work they've done to really push this and get us where we need to be. We've not got a holding list. I won't go as excited as that, but we have got other courses planned for the rest of the year to keep that attrition rate in with us.
Can I just ask about the timeline to get those additional into the force control room?
The dispatchers.
Well, and also the COBs as well, because you referenced 111, but when will that be? When will you get to that?
So there's 13 on the course now, so they will land into the room physically onto their bands in March.
Right.
And then we've got other courses. The next slide, actually, if you want to move to the next slide, just gives you a little bit of a overview. Obviously, it takes you up to January for the comms course, but we've then got a further 2 courses in the year because we're 10% over the budget just for that attrition. And then the controllers, we've got 4 in February and another 4 in June. Again, we've just got a bespoke training plan to look at improving those dispatch training courses, but hopefully you'll see throughout the year that we will, whenever we have a communications course, we will have a dispatch course after that, because we talent spot within that comms course. So anybody that's suitable will move on to that.
Thank you. Can I just bring in John? He's got a question for you.
Thank you very much. It's not a question really, it's just from the onset way back in 2018-19, obviously I've been working very closely with all control room. The work that's been done there is amazing, and we have taken from a position of almost failing completely to actually way back up to the top again. The performance in there now is unbelievable. Morale has gone back up again to where it should be. The 2 managers in there, I have to say, both Fiona and Andy, have done an amazing job of managing the control room. We have got back to a really good team for recruitment and for training. the comms operators themselves and the dispatchers are absolutely performing their best now. We've got to a state now where we're in a fantastic position going forward, and they've had a lot of scrutiny and a lot of comments and a lot of feedback. They've taken it on board and they've made massive changes, and a big thanks to the Commissioner for putting the additional funding in to make sure we can get to that stage, because without that funding we just simply couldn't employ the people to actually perform the job, and it's a people organisation. Without people answering the calls, the public don't get served and the officers don't know where to go. So it's the centre hub of the whole policing business, and it's been a massive success to date.
Thanks very much, John. And I know that Elliot, you want to come in too, but you're actually stolen my...
Very brief, Commissioner, in that if it's high praise indeed coming from Unison. In all fairness, if they're happy, I'm very happy. But again, I was just going to echo my thanks, Commissioner, not just for the investment, but the leadership from Fee and Andy in there, and the team underneath has been absolutely astonishing, with Catherine as the Chief Superintendent and of course Scott as the ACC for local policing. It's been an immense turnaround in that time, which means that the public are far safer than they've been ever. It's been brilliant.
Thank you. You both stole my thunder, because I was going to say that, but right at the end as well. But, you know, it really is. It's phenomenal, actually, what you've managed to do with that funding and turning it around. And Fee and Andy, absolutely fantastic management of the Force Control Room. It feels a very different place, and working there feels very different too. So again, if we have John from Unison saying, you know, being extremely complimentary, I'm delighted. I really am. But anyway,
is this recorded? Because I'm going to save this.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Do you want to carry on, Fee?
I will. Thank you. Very, very kind comments, and I'll make sure that Andy hears of that as well. So thank you very much. Okay, next slide then. That just gives an overview of the performance framework and the scrutiny that we have been under to make sure that we do deliver. So we shall move on from that one. So again, just very quickly, just talking about, so again, we've talked about the dashboards. Oh, we might have got stuck. I've moved on. There, Elaine. There we go. Again, thanks to BI as well. I think we need to mention them by building the dashboards for us. So we've got what we call our FCR, Force Control Room Lifetime. So our deployment managers have that on all the time. So it's constantly refreshing, so we can see where we're at any point in the day as to where we are delivering that service, so that we can service recovery, put measures in place if we are starting to dip on that service level agreement, just to make sure that we are meeting it. Working on response times, again, we've got the dashboard for that, so we can see how we're performing, and then the wider 999-101 dashboard. So that's really helped us in terms of driving that performance. So again, thank you to BI. Next slide. I touched on before about the training hours, power hours. This is just a snapshot of some of the training that the teams have had, and they have gone down really, really well, and they really appreciate it. So we have actually got a 12-month calendar now that's got constant inputs in. Sometimes we have to miss them because we can't obviously affect answering the phones, but with the staff now, we should be able to abstract people for the training. So voice of a child, neglect, missing from home, crime scene investigation, all of these things that our staff need to have an awareness of when they're taking those calls. And so they've gone down really, really well with the teams. And again, thanks to those that have delivered for us. Next one. So again, part of the project was to review the call scripts and reduce the question sets. I won't go into too much detail, but if anyone wants to know what that means after the meeting, please ask the question, and I'm more than happy to talk through them. But as an example, the fraud question set was 46 questions long that had to be answered. We have reduced that now. We've got a really detailed A to Z, which is like the dictionary of all things for a comms officer, and that has aided us to reduce the time that we need to be on the phone to the member of the public, and the after call wrap up, so that we can answer more calls quickly. Change to the Thrive. That doesn't mean that we are reducing that assessment of threat and risk. It just means that we are smarter and quicker at writing that up so that we can again get to those jobs. We've got hotkeys, streamlined processes, promoting the online reporting, which I touched on before, and obviously opening up more avenues for that as well. And that is an ongoing process. And we've introduced what we call a P12 response time, which again has just helped us balance out those attendance times so that we can really determine what those high threat and risk areas are that we need to get to.
B, can I just ask you, what is a P12 for the public watching?
Yes, you can. So we have, very quickly, we have an immediate. So that is, we have to get to you within 15 or 20 minutes. We have what we call a P1, that's a priority one. And that is there isn't no immediate risk to life or serious harm or injury, but we need to get to you. And that's within an hour. The P12 is in essence a P1, but for some reason the victim is not available and the threat and risk is not present at that time. So an example might be somebody is a result of a domestic, but they've gone to work. If they return home at 4 o'clock after work, then there's an immediate threat and risk. So we will arrange to meet that victim at, say, 3 o'clock when they finish. So we P12 that so that we know that we're going to get to that within the timescale. I hope that makes sense for everybody.
It does, thank you.
Okay, next slide. Just a quick snapshot. These are some of our outcomes just to share with you. So we've touched on it already, 999 calls, significantly improved from 13 seconds to 6 seconds. So these are from December to December. 101 from 2 minutes 29 to 1 minute 34. And again, a 64% to 71%. And I said this morning, celebrating with an 88% SLA, which was absolutely superb. I've set the challenge today to match it or beat it. I'll leave it to them. Improved response times, again, for our urban, 75% to 85%. Again, for rural, we know we've got a bit of work to do on the rural, but the focus is there, and the priorities from 68 to 77. Again, I've put on there the vulnerability and repeat, because that is something that we want to identify at the point of call. We are now being able to identify that 80% of the time at that point. So again, that will help to determine how we respond to that call that's coming in. Reduce the number of calls over 2 minutes, and quite rightly, as you've said, we were 44 out of 45 on the list, and we're now 25th. So again, some really good improvements, and obviously we've improved the submissions for online reporting as well. Moving on then, I've gone over my time, I'm sorry. So these are just some outcomes again from HMIC, and this is about those initial questions that we asked the public. So crime prevention advice, initial grading, preservation, because obviously that's really key for when our CSI colleagues attend, to make sure that we've asked the public as much as possible to try and protect the scene for us and identifying that vulnerability at point of call. The next slide, again, won't touch on, that's for people to see as they wish. It's just a snapshot in visuals about the improvement of our performance over a set few months, just so you can see how it's improved over the year. And then just to touch on, Commissioner, again, a big thank you. We have a further business case that we've put to yourselves, and that is to increase the controllers from 72 to 84. And I know your concerns there we haven't got to 72, but we have got a plan to get to that. The introduction of a switchboard, which will help with that 101. Investment in supervisors. So again, it's that immediate welfare and performance management live time. Further channel choice, so we're looking at live chat, which I think will be brilliant for our public to be able to use. The training hub manager, and then we've got a performance analyst and a quality assurer, because it's really important that we really understand the performance and we're quality assuring so that we are improving all of the time. So again, just a big thank you for that. And the last slide is just the opportunities and benefits that will come from that business case that we are now working on.
Thank you very much, Fee. There's some really great work happening in the Force Control Room. I'm absolutely delighted of where you've got to. There's more to do, as you've acknowledged, but you're absolutely going in the right trajectory. You know, I am delighted, I really am. All the information on the slides will be put onto our website, so anybody watching who wants to have a look at them more in detail, you'll be able to go and have a look. But please, we take my thanks back to the Force Control and everybody who works in there for working so hard, and also the senior leadership team too, who have been overseeing this improvement. So thank you. It's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Right. OK, let's move on to the spotlight questions. So I've got 2 here. So I'm not quite sure if Elliot or Scott would like to answer this. For the following is, so following the recent tragic case of Bronson Battersby, which involves social services and police, do North Yorkshire Police respond immediately to concerns raised by social services to conduct welfare checks?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I think the DEP will probably take that one.
Yeah, I'll pick that up, Zoe, because there's a direct link, isn't there, between our safeguarding response and just exactly what Fee and Catherine have spoken about the importance of a really effective force control room. I think it's important to say, isn't it, how tragic that incident was. There can't be any member of the public that isn't touched by that, and it's the same for police officers and staff within the force. I don't want to make any specific comment on that incident because I don't think it's appropriate. We know there's investigations taking place, and we all feel what the impact of that will be for the local community and a family. What I will say is that in incidents like that, where we see occurrences, shall we say, that we know could land in any police force in terms of a phone call coming into the force control room across England and Wales and beyond, is assuring ourselves that we are making the most appropriate assessment that we can without making any judgment whatsoever on what's happened. So what we did was we commissioned a piece of work. Fiona's already mentioned, Catherine has, about our right care, right person policy does not apply to children. And that's entirely appropriate. That's a policy that we've put into place, and we will respond appropriately when we get contacted about children. The second point is where we get contacted from social services about concerns about children. We've dip sampled a number of contacts in that regard, and in every single one we have attended at some point. And what I mean by that is it may well be that attendance immediately isn't the appropriate solution. We need to do a joint visit with social services, or we do go at the time and we conduct a welfare check because a member of the public has rung us and said they're concerned for whatever reason about somebody or young people at that address. We do have information where there are safeguarding concerns available to the call handler when they take that call in terms of markers. So if there are markers that raise the risk, then they will form part of that risk assessment, which then determines when we go and who goes. So out of the 10 we've looked at, we have gone in every case. And the 10 we've dip sampled are 10 random ones from social services to us. So in every case we've gone. And I think that's quite reassuring. As I've said, it's either a welfare check or it's an arranged joint visit, or where we haven't gone immediately, it's because we're seeking further information and actually the risk didn't present that we needed to go at the time. So you can never be complacent. You know, there's so much detail that comes in through the force control room every single day, hundreds of calls, and that's the importance of all those things you've heard Fiona talk about. Thrive, risk assessments, threat, harm, investigation, responding, vulnerability. That's what it stands for, and that's why our people at the front end receive that training to make the best assessment possible.
Thank you, and it really is very reassuring, so thank you very much, Scott. So this is another question that I've had a couple of times actually recently over the last couple of weeks said to me. There's 2 parts to it. So concerns been submitted from a member of the public regarding the time that response officers spend on paperwork rather than on the front line. And the second bit is that they have friends in the police who struggle with their mental health and feel under pressure. So I suppose the questions are, how do North Yorkshire Police split the paperwork workload between officers to ensure that frontline staff are able to be efficient, visible and not overloaded? And the second question is, what does North Yorkshire Police do to protect officers' mental health and avoid stress?
Thanks, Commissioner. I mean, paperwork has been a kind of a thing for police ever since I joined years and years ago, probably around the same time as Sir Robert Peel, in all fairness. And it's one of those things that we have to do. As you've heard Catherine talk about earlier on, there are things like police protection notices that have to be done, risk assessments that have to be done, case files, investigations. The key to this is giving our officers the flexibility with mobile devices so that they're out and about more and not having to come back into the station to do paperwork, to sit there with mountains of this stuff to go through. I think it's fair to say that we've got plans that you're aware of, Commissioner, going into this year, which is going to take a huge burden of some of that paperwork away from our investigative staff. That's going to be, we think, free up somewhere in the region of between 25 and 35,000 police hours of time from paperwork, which is brilliant. We don't split paperwork out between people. People carry workloads, they carry investigations, and they're monitored by their supervisors, and that's why the role of the sergeant is absolutely critical. The sergeant will monitor that, make sure that people aren't dealing with what you call that overburden, that burnout, because we know, once you start to reach a certain level of investigations, it becomes very difficult to make progress. So the sergeant's role is crucial. We're investing in our frontline leaders program with our sergeants so they know how to manage those workloads as well, and it links very neatly actually into the next bit, because we've also been investing in our frontline leaders around spotting well-being issues and how to manage well-being of their staff. There's a number of things we do to manage it. We know that police officers on average attend something like 400, I think, traumatic incidents in their lifetime, where most people won't fortunately ever see one really traumatic incident. So this is that potential for people to become that tacit stress over and over again. So we have something called TRIM, which is the Trauma Risk Incident Management, which is a proactive way of, if somebody's been to an incident, we can intervene. So a traumatic incident, we can intervene early, and refer them through to occupational health services if they need that bit of advice, and encourage that check-in. There's a thing called, actually most of us have got on our phone, called Backup Buddy, which enables us to kind of access services as well to manage our mental health. And again, with the middle leaders program and the frontline leaders program, that focus so they know how to spot those signs as well. And it doesn't just rest with frontline officers as well. It's throughout frontline staff. Our police staff within the control room, I know Fee's on, will say there's interventions at all stages, because you can imagine our call handlers in particular listen to some really traumatic incidents. So I'm really reassured. We've got a wellbeing board that we share with Fire and Rescue as well, really truly collaborative way. So I hope that answers some of your concerns, your person's concerns.
Yeah, thank you. And the wellbeing service is excellent. It really is, the provision that you've got there. Yeah, thank you very much. Right, okay, we're going to go on now to the HMICFRS update, improvement update. Who would like to take this, please?
I think the DEP probably.
Right.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Zoe, if that's okay. Yeah, if you could move on to the next slide, please, Elaine. So this is a short update this month, and I'll explain why. You better than anybody, Commissioner, understand the level of assurance and scrutiny that's been put particularly on two specific areas of HMICFRS. The first one being our response to the Peel inspection, which was conducted in the autumn of 22, which resulted in a report which was actually published roughly 12 months ago, which none of us were happy with, and recognised the improvement that we had to make. But in addition, the National Child Protection Inspection, the NCPI report that was published at the back end of 21 and then resulted in a revisit last year, which also did not reflect well on the force and its response to vulnerability and young people. So I'm just going to touch on both of those. So you'll be aware that as a result of last year's peel inspection, the organisation and improvement plan was put in place, which was a wide-ranging, robust response to improve the areas that HMIC had identified, and that was essentially very broadly applied to many areas of the organisation. That resulted in scrutiny. It resulted in us really looking very carefully at what best practice and what good looks like across other areas of the country, and shall we say, a swiftly delivered improvement programme, which you've seen over the past 12 months or so. We've just gone through our last peel inspection at the back end of autumn. We've seen the draft report, and we've just done some factual accuracy returning back to HMIC as of last Friday. And we are very optimistic that all the hard work from everybody in the organisation, police staff, officers and volunteers, will reflect well when that report's published, and which we're hoping will be the end of February and March. So as a result of that, making the assessment that the improvement plan is no longer required to be in place in the formal way in which it was, that has formally been closed. However, I'll come on to the final bullet point on there in terms of what we're doing to ensure we don't get back to that position again, and how we maintain a very high level of service delivery to the public. So as I've said, we're expecting the report to be published at the back end of February, beginning of March by HMIC. An important element of that was the closure of the cause for concern, which they issued when they did the original peel inspection, which of course meant we received an inadequate, essentially around our enabling services and strategic planning capability. That cause for concern was closed by Michelle Skier, the HMI, at the back end of autumn, which we're delighted with. So we can really start seeing the improvement, and HMIC have too. I'll just come on to the final point around the review of governance, because we really can't and won't get back to the position of another inspection that takes us to that place. So the DEP owns the HMICFRS portfolio. We've just had a really good meeting this morning. It happens every month through the Risk and Assurance Board. That board oversees different work streams with HMIC. So whether it's the peel efficiency and legitimacy inspection, whether it's child protection and NCPI, whether it's forthcoming inspections, which I'll come on to later, the deputy will oversee both preparation and response and assurance that the plans we have put in place aren't just in place, but they're delivering what they should do for victims and the public of North Yorkshire, and actually our people. So if we're saying we've got a genuine welfare offer, then we need to be absolutely assured that that's the case. If we're saying we've got wood workforce development, then we need to understand that that's in place. So you can see on the bottom of that slide the timeline that we've gone through, which just to confirm the improvement plan's been closed, and we await excitedly the publication of the peel report in several weeks' time. Move on to the next slide, please, Elaine. There we are. Okay, so I've touched on peel and working across those areas, both in terms of responding to the public, protecting vulnerable people, delivering policing with fairness and legitimacy. And I think it's fair to say we will see improvements in most of those areas in the forthcoming report. In terms of the NCPI recommendations, which the public rightly should be concerned about because it relates to protecting vulnerable people and particularly children, we were issued with 9 recommendations from that report. We have now submitted 7 to be signed off. There are 2 outstanding. The first one is on the slide, which is recommendation 6, which relates to child protection investigations. We have a tremendous amount of assurance work taking place, and until I and other senior leaders in the force are absolutely assured that our investigations are where they need to be, and it's across a wide range of different elements, whether it's submitting a public protection notice, whether it's ensuring that our supervision of those investigations is robust, or we've got the right number of detectives in our brand new structures that you are aware we've implemented, then we won't be submitting that to be written off. And the other important element with this is we've just done a joint audit with our child protection partners, particularly the City of York, Children's Social Care and North Yorkshire. And there's a real appetite as a partnership to address the issues that have been raised. And I think, you know, it's a well-used term, isn't it? Safeguarding everybody's business. This is not something the police should or can do alone. It's really important we reach out to other organisations and understand how we all can protect children in the best way possible. That being said, we know that the majority of activity that will address that recommendation 6 is already well in train. The implementation of dedicated safeguarding investigation teams. For a long time in North Yorkshire, we've had a mixed criminal investigation department. We no longer have that. We've got dedicated safeguarding investigation across our 3 commands. We've invested heavily in online child abuse capability, registered sex offender management, and the Peel report will speak to that and the improvement. So that's recommendation 6. Recommendation 7, we've done a lot of work on this and a lot of progress. There's still a little bit more to do. Understanding the propensity of CSE across the county. There's some process issues we need to iron out that aren't simple because they're linked to our RT systems, and other forces have the same issues, so we're learning from them. But I would expect those 2 recommendations to be submitted for sign-off over the next couple of months. There's a tremendous amount of work that's been done. And then just looking forward a little bit, we've 2 inspections this year. The first one relates to serious and organised crime and our ability to tackle that. And that ranges from our very specialist units and some of our covert work right down to what neighbourhood policing do to tackle organised criminality in neighbourhoods. And the second inspection is incredibly important for public confidence, which is across 3 areas actually. It's looking at our effectiveness of vetting our own staff, which clearly has raised a great deal of concern nationally. It's looking at our counter-corruption capability, and it's also looking at our professional standards investigation capability. And again, the deputy is responsible for those elements in the organisation, and we're currently going through the planning process and preparing for that properly. And you can see there, both May and September is when some of the activity on those will start. But just reiterate it, an unbelievable amount of work done by the whole organisation to really deliver that improvement that I know you appreciate, but which HMIC in their independent voice will hopefully reflect.
Yes, absolutely, Scott. And it's so positive that you have the causes of concern lifted. I mean, I cannot stress to the public and everyone that's watching the amount of work that goes into this and has gone into it is just, again, I'm going to use that word, phenomenal. It really, really is. And I'm so pleased for the force, I really am, that you've had those causes of concerns lifted, as well as North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service too, which I'm delighted at as well. What I will say is, yes, I'm hoping that we hope that the Peel inspection report will be published towards the end of February, which is great, and we shall all wait for that being published. But, you know, thank you so much. There has been an amazing amount of work done in this space. There really, really has. I will put a bit of a soft challenge into you, though, Scott, as you are acting DEP. I mean, for me, as far as I'm concerned, and I have always said, there is no reason why this force cannot be outstanding and aim to be outstanding. Now, it takes a period of time. It can't be done very quickly at all. And certainly in your next inspection, so the next round of Peel inspections, I would hope that when I watch from afar that you are outstanding, absolutely. And I know that the systems and processes and the governance and the scrutiny and the will is there to do that. But my challenge is, I think this has worked very, very well for the public to be able to see the improvement plan and to see come on the journey with us, and for us to be open and transparent with the public. And so when your new Chief Constable comes in, Tim Forber, I will be having a conversation about doing something like, you know, the improvement plan section on the agenda for these meetings, because I think the public get a lot of reassurance, and it's always about trust and confidence, isn't it? And being able to demonstrate that you are improving all the time, because we're always evolving, aren't we? And I know there's a real will in that. So I will be a soft challenge to you there, Scott, but I'm having conversation with the new Chief Whitney Lance. Okay.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah, we all have we have that appetite to be the best we can be.
Yeah.
And that needs to translate to outstanding service for the public. So you've no argument with the soft challenge.
I know. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you. Right, now we're going to go on to the public questions. Now, this is fantastic, everyone that submitted a public question. I think it's brilliant. I really, really do. So we are going to fly through them. If anybody isn't happy with the response that I give today, or North Yorkshire Police, please let us know. Really happy to put a full and written response to you. But I think it's great that we've got so many questions, so let's try and get through them as much as possible. Okay.
Commissioner, will you excuse me? I've got that operational matter that I spoke about.
Yes, of course, Scott. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye now.
Right. Actually, the first question really is to me, and that's Andrew from York about support services for men. So he says that you speak about ending sexual abuse against women and children. Why do you not care about sexual abuse against men? And thank you very much for this question, Andrew. You know, whenever I've done my supermarket surgeries across the county, sometimes I do get this question raised to me, and I always point to our Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. And in here, and I'm going to read it from here, in our introduction to the strategy, it does say, so violence against women and girls, which is referred to as VAWG, it refers to any act of violence or abuse that disproportionately affects women or girls and is usually perpetrated by men. However, we recognise that men and boys can also be victims of these crimes, and women can be perpetrators. Although we use the term VAWG throughout this strategy, unless otherwise stated, support and services are available for all victims of these crimes, regardless of their gender, age, sexuality, or background. And just to say that all our support services, as I say, are available to anyone of any gender. Right, so I hope that answers that in full. But Andrew, if you want to come back to me, that's absolutely fine. Okay, let's go on to question 2. So Rebecca from Selby, and it's about speeding. What is done to prevent speeding along Brook Street in Selby Town Centre? Over to you, NYP.
Thanks, Commissioner. We know the speed management protocol that's in place enables members of the public, obviously, to raise their concerns around speeding in their area, which is good. We've had some backlogs there. We acknowledge that due to some health and safety reasons and capacity issues, which I won't go into here. That's all being reviewed. There's hopefully going to be an introduction of a software technological solution coming in place in the first quarter, which will not only allow us to clear up those backlogs in that speed management one, but will actually help us improve the visibility of the safety camera team as well on that stretch. So it is important to know that the bit that you're talking about, and I totally understand your concerns with it, because 2 of the roads there, the Doncaster Road and I think it's Brook Street, and there's another stretch there, form part of what we would call our red routes, our priority routes, where we know that people are more likely to be seriously injured. And so there are a number of locations along that route for safety camera vans, which are out there regularly. I have asked that we look at the frequency of that again, just to make sure that we're out there as many times as we can. But again, Commissioner, you'll know we're working with our partner. We're working with the partners on that one through the Safer Roads partnerships, because there's a lot of work that partners can do in that space as well.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about the dog.
Next question, please. So Francis from York, and this is about armed police. Please, can you tell me why it's necessary to have armed police in central York during the Christmas market?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I understand actually why people may have been concerned, but actually in the Christmas markets, in particular, there's a national initiative called Crowded Places. We know that there are some areas of the country where we're more likely to get a terrorist attack, and it's as simple as that, you know. And there's a huge amount of reassurance we can do. None of us, I think, want to see regular armed policing patrol, and that's not what British policing is about, and I'm 100% with it. What we did do was try and say to our people, you know, our armed officers that were out there, were to engage with the public, reassure the public of why they were there. In fact, I have to say we received quite a lot of emails through to our head of specialist operations and through to the control room as well, about that, about our armed officers in that area. So I know it looks a little bit scary when you see armed police walking around, but I would just say, if you do see them in those crowded places, go and talk to them. They will reassure you, and they do love talking to people.
Thank you very much, Elliot. On to the next question. Tim from Skipton, it's about road safety. Can the Chief Constable explain why North Yorkshire Police are not proactively tackling highway crimes in Skipton, please? Yeah,
and when I looked at this, I'm assuming that highway crime, you mean parking around, you know, illegal parking, etc. So parking issues come under the county council and the local authority to deal with, and they're generally enforced by them. But we do get involved where this becomes dangerous. And I know, Commissioner, you and I have spoken before about, in particular, around school areas where people parking during drop-off times, etc., can cause a hazard. So we've got PCSOs working with individual schools around those areas regularly, trying to patrol. We can't be outside every single school at every single drop-off time, and we would just ask, you know, as parent myself with young children, I just ask, please, you know, think about what you're doing when you're parking there. We will continue to work with the schools. We'll continue to work with the public on it, but parents, you know, we'd ask them, please think about what you're doing when you're parking there. You know, some of the schools that you're talking about, we do actually take action. Let me just say that where there is illegal parking, where there is a hazard, where it does cause a concern, we will take direct action there. So, you know, just to reassure you, we do it.
Yeah, and just to say that I did actually have a gentleman on from the Craven area on my online advice surgeries, and we were talking about parking on pavements and his concern there for disabled people not to be able to get down the pavements, or, you know, anybody with a pram or a buggy, for instance, and that sort of thing. You know, it is a real concern, and I hear that across the county. We've put them in touch with their local county councillor and also North Yorkshire Council too, but it is a concern, and we have to be considerate. We really do. Right. Okay, so we're going on to question 5, and this is Barbara from Richmond, and it's about climate change. What steps are the police taking to reduce their carbon footprint and mitigate the effects of climate change? Is the government giving extra money for solar panels to be installed on all police buildings and funding the purchase of electric vehicles?
Yes, so yes, we are. Effectively, we are looking at this really closely. I think this is something that if in all fairness, probably a lot of police forces are a little bit late to the party with. So we've got a target to reduce carbon emissions by 40% in the next 6 years, which is ambitious, but we're going to be doing that through a number of measures, such as investing in more fuel efficient fleets. We will be looking at whether or not the purchase of electric vehicles, for example. I know Police Scotland have gone down that route, so we're examining that. Looking at the use of renewable energy sources, looking at how we use our energy consumption in buildings, for example. And there's a range of things that we're looking at going into the future. There are some grant funding. There is some grant funding available. So the Public Sector Decarbonisation Fund is one. There's a pot of money there, so we'll be looking into that really closely as we move in, because some of our buildings are being upgraded, as you know. Some others will be built, and they'll all be done in a carbon efficient way. We are very aware of the overall aim of net zero, which is where we want to be as a force as well.
Thank you. Next question, Jennifer from Ripon. The police station. Ripon is a city with a growing population, and we don't have a dedicated police station. Right. So this large and growing community requires a full-time and fully manned police station. Please, can you tell me if there are any plans to fulfil this much needed obligation, or if why not?
Yes, Commissioner, as you know, there's a refurbishment underway, quite a big one, and we're on with that. Some of our estate is a little bit old and is in need of updating. So we're looking at repurposing the ground floor of that police station to improve public interaction, which will involve the creation of a new front counter, new rooms for people to talk to officers and staff in, changing that first floor to create better meeting spaces for the fire service as well, so we can make it easier to collaborate and to co-train, and for firefighters to train as well. And of course, improving windows and lighting and making it more energy efficient, as we've just talked about as well. We want a pleasant working environment for our staff as well as an energy efficient one. But we're also looking at providing that base in Ripon Town Hall on the marketplace as well, which is going to really improve police visibility in the city centre. We know that actually it's been a little bit fashionable, as I'd say, over years for front counters and police stations, as it were, to sort of draw down. But we do recognise in towns and busy towns as well as rural areas, there is a real need to have that face-to-face contact with police. So we really are looking at where we can get co-location with fire and rescue, where we can get co-location with other agencies and partners, maximise our use of the estate, but provide that. So yes, a long answer for saying we are on with it in Ripon.
Yeah, and it is imminently, isn't it, Elliot? That it's going to. You're going to be doing those drop-ins at the town hall, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just to say, Jennifer, I have invested over £1 million in the fire station at Ripon, and there's going to be an awful lot work happening there too, which Elliot has talked about there. Right, on to the next question. Rosemary from York, youth services. Now, why can't the police put funding into traditional youth services, borrow ahead from the days when less money has to be spent on dealing with stabbings and even maybe a few saved heartbreaks? Over to you, Elliot, and then I'm going to hand on to Jenny from my office about commission services.
Yeah, Commissioner, you know that, I mean, I speak not just on behalf of myself, but on behalf of the incoming Chief Constable, that actually we are hugely committed to prevention and early intervention. And we spoke about this the other night as well, I know. It is far better. We would rather be investing upstream and making sure that these crimes don't happen. It is an absolute tragedy when we read about these things happening, you know, stabbings and violence amongst young people, but of any age really. So we do some work with your office, with other partners as well. I know I don't want to steal your thunder, so I'll talk about the police cadet scheme in particular. We work with a lot of young people through our cadet scheme. We work a lot with safer neighbourhoods. We work with our neighbour policing teams to reach out as well. So we do a huge amount, and the police cadet scheme is open to young people aged 13 to 18. So not only is it good fun, but it's actually a really good way to meet people, get new skills. So it's that more traditional, as you're talking about, Rosemary, some of those traditional sort of youth services that we used to see. We do invest in them as well. So as well as the crucial crew, which you may come on to as well.
Thanks, Elliot. Yeah, just to reiterate everything that Elliot said there, prevention and early intervention is at the heart of the services that we commission on behalf of yourself, Zoe. And key to that is our Change Direction programme, which is our youth diversion scheme. So that's got prevention and early intervention built into it. It's also really important that all of our partners and our police colleagues can refer young people who've come to their attention, maybe not yet offending, but actually it's about coming to notice, and actually they can get a referral into that service straight away. We've also spent a significant amount of funding on projects and interventions, again, around prevention and early intervention through our community fund and our community safety services fund. And all of those are open to organisations and members of the public to put in applications to look at addressing feel safe and be safe in terms of their communities. So that's just a bit of a kind of an overview of the things that we do. But Simon will put up some links to community fund, the community safety services fund, and our Change Direction programme as well.
Thank you. And we also have piloted the youth provision as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that in York, Jenny?
Sorry, Zoe, you've just broken up there.
Sorry, do you want to talk a little bit about the mobile provision in York that we've piloted through the community fund?
Absolutely, yes. So we do have youth provision available in the community through our North Yorkshire Youth Services. So that's available to any young person who, again, comes to the attention of any of our local authority partners or our community safety partners, and referrals can be made into that service at any point where somebody comes to attention rather than where offending's taking place. So again, Simon can provide the links into that service and where those are available.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. On to the next question. Catherine, did you want to come in on that last question?
I just wondered if you might be interested, just some really recent stats, if I may just add, in terms of school liaisons. Our school liaisons team have been working very, very hard in terms of this as well. So they've done a campaign in December 23 called One Punch Can Kill, Is It Worth It? So they delivered 32 assemblies to 5,424 students in total. They've been supported by our major incident team, so those who deal, sadly, with homicide. So they have been trying to encourage the Walk Away campaign. In terms of county lines and No More Knives and county lines, we are launching that. We've been into York High, Bowlby High, Selby, Rossett High, Harrogate, and we have a force-wide rollout. So they are making their way through schools. Crucial Crew, which we've heard about, 56 schools, 1,278 Year 6 pupils, drug awareness, and we're supported by our colleagues in the fire service as well. So just thought that might be a worthwhile addition to that last question, if that's okay.
That's great. Thanks very much. Some great stats there. Brilliant. Okay. Question 8. I think we've just jumped one actually, Simon. Here we go. Liz from Scarborough, minor crime. Why have the police stopped enforcing minor laws that are broken?
I haven't. We haven't, to be honest with you, not at all. Firstly, I would just like to say it's Neighbourhood Policing Week this week, and our neighbourhood policing teams in particular have been, I mean, they're amazing people dealing with problems day in, day out. So I think, you know, it's well known, I've said it plenty of times, there's no such thing as a minor crime to the public. If you're the victim of crime, it's a crime. So we absolutely understand that. So just to reassure you, particularly in the Scarborough area, you know, a huge amount of work is being done to address a number of key issues. So we've got operations such as op beat and op culture, and they've been developed to tackle some of the behaviour you've talked about. It's all based on evidence around what times this kind of behaviour, antisocial behaviour, happens. We know we've got an investment at the moment in antisocial behaviour and fund that we can access as well to assist us with tackling that going into this year as well. So we're going to be putting dedicated teams into those locations, as well as clear hold build, which I'm sure we've spoken about in the past as well. We work together with local businesses such as shops and restaurants to try and make a pleasant and positive town centre environment as well. And we really do regularly take action against individuals that cause antisocial behaviour using our powers such as community protection orders and criminal behaviour orders, etc. In relation to some of the matters raised about highways have responsibility for the parking, I saw that in there around the mobile homes. So again, we will make sure that we do refer on to those as well. And just in regard to that last bit around the bit around the booze capital of the north, that's none of us want that. Absolutely none of us want that. What I will say is it might seem that that's the case, but there are actually far fewer places to drink alcohol there now than there were 10 years ago, and our licensing team regularly intervene where a new one comes up. They're actually really robust about it, because again, we want Scarborough, we want all of our towns really to be tourist attractions, places where people can come and feel safe. We don't really want the kind of town that I know that you're probably referring to here, so we're onto it.
Thank you very much. And it is Neighbourhood Policing Team Week, and I was out with the Guildhall team yesterday, and they do some fantastic, vital work with residents and the local business community there, so they do a great job. Okay, on to the next one. Louise from York, and this is about violence against women and girls. Now that there is a more widespread understanding of the strategies used by abusers and the effects on victims of emotional and psychological abuse, what advice is given to victims coming forward to the police to aid survival and escape, now compared to when my family and I encountered it from 2015 to 2021.
Yeah, well, firstly, I'm sorry you went through that, Louise. A horrific experience, and it happens far too often. I think we've made great steps as not just North Yorkshire Police, but as a police service actually across the country over the past few years. We've rolled out what we call DA Matters to over 1,000 frontline officers and staff. All new recruits now receive training as part of their student officer training as well. And we cover topics such as understanding what coercive controlling behaviour is and the stages of that, tactics that perpetrators use to keep victims in relationships, questions used with victims of domestic abuse, the impact of domestic abuse as well, and coercive control on children, because we look at it not just as a victim, but that family unit now. Safeguarding victims, perpetrator manipulation of police response. There's a huge amount of training gone into this, and all of the specialist domestic abuse officers have received this, and all domestic abuse reports are subject as well to a specialist secondary risk assessment by the domestic abuse team, so they're scrutinised. We work around Clare's law and the right to know. There's a huge amount of work going on. I know Catherine has been in this space, so I'm going to let her talk through this one as well quickly.
Is that okay, Commissioner? I just wanted to mention a couple of things really that I think are really important in this space. The Chief's already outlined there is so much, and Louise, you're right. We have much more widespread understanding, thank goodness. So we've touched earlier on in the meeting on something which we are calling Operation Crystal. So that isn't an out there operation. It's an operation of upskilling our staff and officers who investigate all kinds of crime, but we are really focusing on safeguarding and victims. So we have a 3-day programme. Day 3 of our Op Crystal is really focusing on victims, the victim experience, so our officers can really try and empathise as best as they can, to think, to consider, and we are looking at a little bit of a different approach with a national specialist on victim survivors of all kinds of abuse, but we are very much concentrating through Op Crystal on those really high harm crimes, which obviously domestic abuse includes. And then the final thing, if I may, Commissioner, I'm hoping I'm not going to steal anything from you, but your Just a Kiss campaign, which I know has been out there for a little while, but I've watched that recently as newcomer to the force, and it's brilliant and it's really helpful. We are now going to roll that out, which we've asked for your permission already, as a training piece to our officers. So that is now going to be built into shift briefings for all frontline officers, and that is now going to be part of that Day 3 Operation Crystal. So if anybody does online get an opportunity to see that, it's I think 9 small little videos that focus on stalking, and it's really hard hitting, it's really impressive. So again, a really good educational piece for our officers to try and understand the impact on victims. Thank you.
And again, just to finalise on this one, because it is a really important topic, Commissioner, I just want to reassure around North Yorkshire Police that, again, I think at the last count we had by far the best arrest rate for domestic abuse. I mean, by a huge margin, and I think we're best in country as well for our use of domestic violence prevention notices and our breaches of those. So we're proactively managing offenders, and that's the bit. It's safeguarding the victim, but relentless focus on tackling the offenders as well.
Thank you very much. Jenny, did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, just to add that our commissioned service provider, IDAS, would do bespoke cope and recovery and safety plans with individuals as they access their services as well, but also that Simon will put a link online to the Just a Kiss videos.
I hope, Louise, that really gives you some reassurance that there's an awful lot going on. So that's brilliant. Thanks for that question. Right, okay, question 10, please. Right, okay, so this is Dawn from Hambleton. It's about HMICFRS. Can you explain why the 21-22 PIL inspection appears to be missing or very hard to find from the North Yorkshire PFCC website? So that's my website. And why is there no attention given to the wider report findings that show that North Yorkshire Police did not adequately meet the standards for building, supporting and protecting the workforce, protecting vulnerable people, investigating crime and responding to the public? Right, so I see a note at the bottom. We've responded to Dawn. We've identified where the HMICFRS reports are published on our website and advised of the media release around the 21-22 Peel inspection report. So we've gone back to Dawn and explained that. But as you can see, Dawn, we are in a very different space now with the causes of concerns lifted, but that's where you can find them. So question 11, Brian from Midland. It's a criminal and a civil matter. So a gentleman had a problem with his Range Rover. He contacted a man who advertised to repair the vehicle for £5,000. The man took his Range Rover along with the money for repair, but the man who said he would fix it sold the vehicle. The police were contacted. They saw the vehicle, but decided that this was not a criminal matter, but a civil one. What's the difference? Now, that's a really good question.
Yeah, and it's really difficult. I don't know the unfortunately the TV the item you talk about, so I can't really comment on that. But at the end of the day, there's in that particular sort of scenario, if I make that a little bit broader, it's one of these ones that actually we get taught in training school. What's the difference between is it a theft, isn't it? Is it a civil matter? So, for example, a person takes the car to the garage to be fixed, pays some money but doesn't pay all of the bill. It becomes, if the person then sells the car, it's because it's a civil matter. They're recovering the debt. If the person has taken the Range Rover to the garage and the chap has said, thanks very much, I'm going to fix your car, doesn't fix the car, sells the car off, then that would be a crime. That's theft. That is about them going into the definitions, but dishonestly appropriating that property for themselves, and then with that intention of permanently depriving someone of it. That's the theft definition. So is it a civil matter? If it's a crime, if it's something in law that says this is criminal, I know it sounds as basic as that. There is a legal statute or a common law that says this is a crime and a criminal act has been committed, we would deal with it. And some of the ones we get quite frequently, and I'm sure both Fee and Catherine will back me up on this one, is sort of disputes over rent and property for landlords, tenants type stuff, which tend to, someone will say, well, my landlord has kept hold of my stuff, but they haven't paid the rent. That becomes, it's because it's a civil matter. They're trying to reclaim the debt on the property. If somebody had just gone in and taken your stuff, that's a burglary, and that's the difference. It is quite complex. I'm not a civil lawyer or any kind of lawyer in actual fact, but that's it in a nutshell. I hope that sort of clears it up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. I do know that Brian says this may not have happened in North Yorkshire. However, still a good question, though.
It is, yeah.
Right. Question 12, please. So this is from Martin, and it's about cycles with no lights. And it's also about cyclists wearing dark winter clothing, making them very hard to see. It then goes on to say, I've seen police vans drive past cycles and take no action. Why is that?
Okay, well, first of all, that actually every member of the public knows there's a reason we ask for people to put, well, it's the law, put lights on your bike, wear bright clothing. We do not want anyone to be a victim of a road traffic collision on our roads, and you know how vulnerable that you can be as a cyclist. If you're in a collision with a car or a lorry or a moving vehicle, motor vehicle, it can be catastrophic. We know this, and I would just say, if you are a cyclist, be responsible about it. As for the police officers driving past, I can only make an assumption here, if it has happened, that they're en route to something that they've got to be at. It might, like Chief Superintendent Willie spoke earlier on and said, actually, this might be a priority grade. There's not immediate threat to life, but they have to get there within the hour. And we might be talking about domestic abuse and so forth. I've seen, and I've done it myself, plenty of times where I've stopped someone on a cycle and said, what are you doing? Do you realise you're about to become another statistic if you do not get off that cycle and walk? So that's the long and short of it. I can't answer why that happened. I would imagine that's probably what it was, though, Commissioner. And we are very keen for cyclists to make themselves very visible on our roads.
Thank you. Okay, question 13, please. And this is from James, and it's about 101. So it's a good job that Fiona has stayed on the meeting. So is there an optimum time to call 101? When are the peak times for calls for 101, and we hear about the average wait time for 101 calls, but what is the range of wait times, shortest to longest, over your recorded period?
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, James. And please don't hold me to account for this verbatim, but I might be able to help you out a little bit. Just looking, basically calls for us obviously fluctuate throughout the day, but calling before 8 AM is probably a good time on 101, or after 8 PM. Our peak times are really between 5 PM and 7:30, that sort of handover, but we do have more staff. We have an overlap of staff on an afternoon, so again between 1 and 2:30 is again a good time. What I can say is that we are exploring what we call a queue buster. So we have had it in the past, but with the reserve agent, we've had to do some technically work around. But we are looking to introduce that, so it gives the option for the caller to get a call back, so they're not having to sit and wait. In fact, we've been on with that this afternoon, so we are going to just test it and just make sure that it's working and actually of benefit to the public. But that hopefully should reduce the amount of time you're having to wait, but also that you won't be waiting too long for that call back either. The shortest time, as we mentioned before, it can be anything from a minute waiting on 101, and the longest that we've had, which again none of us are happy with, is 55 minutes. But I can tell you that certainly since November we haven't had anything over an hour, and we are reducing that every day. As I said, there are options to report online, should that be appropriate, but again before 8 AM, between 1 and 2:30 is potentially the best times for you to be able to report it through to us.
Yeah, and it has to be said, doesn't it, Fiona, that, if the force control room is just extremely busy, nobody wants anybody to be waiting a 101 any longer than a couple of minutes. Really, we just don't want that. But if there are lots and lots of calls come flying into the force control room, it is extremely busy. But there are those other options. But I think that sounds, a really good idea about the queue buster myself, and we've talked, I've been briefed about it, but I know there's an awful lot more work going to be done and implemented, as we've talked about on this meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, question 14. This is the last one, everyone. So Helen from Haxby. It's about flooding and road safety. Is there a contingency plan for avoiding the bridges at times of flooding, as the bridges must be under stress from the high water volumes? Okay.
Yes. So, from a police point of view, Commissioner, whenever we get a sort of flood warnings and adverse weather warnings, we tend to get those through our local resilience forum as well, and that's a combination of ourselves, Environment Agency, local authority, and a number of partners that come together, Fire and Rescue Service, for example, and we will then start to look at across the county where those rivers are likely to cause a problem, either for flooding or, as in this case, from bridges. Where that is the case, we try and close the roads. We know that people don't always follow those signs where there are dangers, and we would just say you need to, because they're there for a reason. We don't put them out there just for the fun of it, but there is a contingency plan which does involve some roads, some bridges, some dangerous areas, but it's done very much in conjunction with the Environment Agency.
Right, okay, thank you so much. Fantastic questions, everyone, so please keep them coming in. It's just brilliant, it really is. I'm going to end the meeting now. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who contributed. Thank you to you all for watching in on this. If you're watching it on catch up, great, thank you very much. So the next meeting is on the 21st of February. It's for the Fire and Rescue Service, and it's going to be focusing on the risk and resource model. So thank you very much, and have a great end to your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.